Thank you so much.
Welcome everyone, and I hope you're having a great time until now. I haven't been able to see all the sessions, but from what I've seen, it's a great success, although some mishaps in the morning, and I will try to make sure to also not press the end meeting button later today.
That would
With
be
that being,
great, yes.
yeah, with that being said, let's start. This is my talk about you're ready for AI, but are you users? And it's an interesting one because I think it fits really well after the session we just had. But again, just to reiterate, please keep in mind the code of conduct. And I would normally also thank the sponsors here, but I believe there's no sponsors for this conference. So any company watching this now or later at recordings, this is a great conference. Get in touch with them so next time you can sponsor them. I'm Leo Visser. I'm from the Netherlands and I'm a consultant at OGD. I do stuff with AI, automation, cloud, everything. I just like tinkering with technology. And I also have done multiple Copilot implementations by now because I was one of the first people tinkering with AI. So I was the person who was sent there to help the companies. I'm also an Azure MVP in PowerShell, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. There's my blog, autosysops.com, and other socials. You can find me at autosysops, and I post about all kinds of stuff. I'm not a lawyer, so everything I'm talking about today, if you're going to do anything with this, please also check with your legal team if you need to. I'm just going to rearrange my screens a bit because I'm also trying to keep an eye out in the chat if there's anything mentioned. So I'm going to quickly talk to you about the European AI Act because for a lot of people, it's the big elephant in the room. It's there. We have to do something with it, but what do we have to do with it? Then I'm going to talk a little bit about user sentiment. We're going to talk about AI literacy, transparency, and at the end, I will give you some pointers on what you can really do now already. Because AI is there. We can't get rid of it anymore. Whatever we do, it's there. But when we first started introducing AI, we kind of thought it would be what we see on the left. At least I think it's all on the left, that there's no mirroring happening. It's a future I might not like, but it's yeah. So, but when we started using it more and more and more, there were some small details, some small things which could have been better. Uh, you've seen it doing categorization of stuff, and I don't think it's a tank which we see, but yeah, let's just say the AI is not perfect yet. On the other hand, it's made by humans, and humans are not perfect, so what can we expect? And this kind of brought us to the point where we needed regulation. From early on already, many companies who are working in the field of AI at the front, they were saying, please give us regulation. Because companies can self-regulate, but often it will only hurt themselves. And if they regulate themselves and competitors don't, they will have a unfair competition. So they said, please give us some regulations. And some regulations were introduced, and they were mostly based on risks, just like we did with a lot of stuff. Because I've got here a kid's toy. I don't have children myself, but when I was younger, I might have had something like this. It looks like the kind of toy I would like. Can anybody think of things which could be dangerous about a toy like this? You can put them in the chat if you want. I think it's an innocent toy. People will just play with it. Yes, Gita already says it. Eye damage. children started looking into the barrel, and it would hurt their eyes because the lasers might have been a bit too strong. So if you look at regulations now on European level, there's actually regulations for toy guns which have lasers in them on how strong these lasers are allowed to be. I also see stuff like violent tendencies, and this is also something we will get into about how to actually use it. So we kind of need this kind of regulation for our AI systems as well. And this brought us to the European AI Act. Now, first, a very big disclaimer about the European AI Act. The European AI Act was worked on for a long time already, before the generative AI systems really took off. It was mostly created for the other systems we all call AI, because in the past we had machine learning, we had more like algorithms, we had like AI, generative AI, and so on, and we now call it all AI because of marketing. So this act is this tries to give you like a set of regulations you can use for all your AI systems, which is hard. And this is why it's trying to categorize these systems. So within the AI Act, there's several categories. There's the prohibited AI practices, the high-risk AI systems, the general purpose AI models and systems, generative AI and chatbots, and other AI. And they all have their own areas. When we're talking about normal Copilot M365, Copilot Chat, and so on, we're mostly talking about the general purpose AI models and systems and the generative AI and chatbots. We, in most cases, just have to worry about the rules around that. But I've worked with several different organizations by now, and in practice, it's not as simple. Because if we're going to look at the prohibited AI practices, we're going to find stuff like manipulating human behavior, exploiting vulnerabilities in persons. What does that mean? It means that you use some kind of AI system to detect if somebody has some kind of vulnerability. This can be a handicap, either mentally or physically. It could be some kind of social status, which could be a vulnerability, and using this. Social scoring, predicting of crime. If people know the movie Minority Report, it's still prohibited by the European AI Act. I think that's a good thing. Also looking at the plot of the movie. Facial recognition, biometric categorization, biometric identification, those are kinds of things which are prohibited by the AI Act. You can use these things, but you have to explain why you are using it. And I will get back to this in a moment. But there's some stuff here which I think is actually happening. For example, social scoring. I've seen insurers working with AI and looking into ways where they could have AI detect, for example, if somebody needs a higher bill for their car insurance because they might be a more dangerous driver, they might have had a lot of damage already. You could argue that this is social scoring. Exploiting vulnerabilities, having algorithms which determine the price you pay for a flight based on your geographic location and other stuff. This could be considered exploiting vulnerabilities. So it is a lot of gray area. And at the moment, this AI Act, it's mostly descriptive, but it's not really enforced. As in the law doesn't say how it should be enforced. It's mostly a framework of rules which you can comply to, and it's up to the other countries to see how they're really going to enforce it. And this will be also added later. Now, if you're talking about like high-risk AI systems, then we're getting into stuff which is, for example, covered by safety components in European law. What does this mean? For example, if you're making something for the military, which is used by the European military, it will always be in a high risk, in the high risk categorization. This could also be for police work or for other things which are governed by like the safety components of European law. And the other part, it's a bit complicated how I've wrote it down, but if you're not doing any narrow task or continuing work which is already done by a human or doing some like prep work or just use it to detect deviations, then things in these areas are also in high risk. So biometrics, critical infrastructure, education, employment, essential private and public services, law enforcement, migration and asylum and justice, democratic processes. For example, you could look at like employment systems. And if you just have an AI system which looks at the job postings and I think it's also CV in English, the curriculum vitae, and they look at it and and the AI system will just say these people are the best to pick and make a short list. This will be a high risk AI system because it's not really building on a human task, or it's not really a preparatory task or used to detect deviations. But if you, for example, use the AI system to do like a double check, so you have somebody who checks the people who are submitting to the job offer, and they're making a list, and the AI is just checking based on the people you picked and based on the people you rejected, and it says, hey, you rejected somebody here who seems to fit with the profile of all the people you did accept, and just flags it like, do you want to reconsider it? This would be like a deviation checking. So this would not fit in the high risk AI systems. So there's all these kinds of interpretations and gray areas. And one I have a lot of connection with, or which I notice a lot, is the essential private and public services. Because this is not really defined. And you could, for example, say that if you work for a company which provides a service to the whole country, or a very big service, say a company which provides like a medical system, a medical dossier or whatever, it might be considered essential private or public services. So do keep this in mind, because if you're working with high risk systems, or if you're working with prohibited AI systems where you ask for like an exemption, then you need to do a data protection impact assessment. This is also a GDPR requirement, and it's also coming back to the earlier talks we had already. So you need to check if personal data is systematically assessed, if there's like processing on a large scale for these specific categories, and if there's like systematic monitoring of publicly accessible areas on a large scale, these kinds of things. If you're doing this, you need to have this in your impact assessment. There's templates for these impact assessments, and you can just follow these templates and it should go okay. Another one you need to keep in mind is that you also need to do a fundamental rights impact assessment. This is actually the harder one. You can use part of the data protection impact assessment in your fundamental rights impact assessment. There is an overlap in it. And if you did the one already, you can use the same stuff in the other one. You don't have to completely redo it. And here you really need to look at the justice and democratic systems, the education, the employment, the biometric identification, and so on. There's also, again, templates for this. These assessments, they are standardized, and you can just follow them. But you do need to do them. You do need to show that you've done them. And in some cases, you actually need to let this information know at the regulatory bodies. Again, please confer with your legal departments about where you exactly need to send this information and so on. And this is like the AI Act. And we as IT people, we as IT professionals, if you're like a consultant, we're getting good at this. We're getting to the point where we know about this stuff, where we can help customers with this. We can use systems like Purview. We can use systems like described before, where we can make sure, especially if you've done the admin track, make sure that this is all working, that this is set up, that this is what your users think. Your users, they see you're going to implement AI in your organization. You're going to announce to the company, we're going to make sure that Copilot M365 will be implemented. We're going to become an AI-driven company and so on. And they just think AI is going to take over my job. I don't know. Can you raise your hands in the chat? Who here has ever saw like a media article that AI would take over their job? Yeah, I see some hands, I see some reactions. I think a lot of us have seen this happen, right? That in the media, everybody is scaring us like AI will take over your job. Now, who here has actually experienced that AI has taken over their job? If you want to share this, and I hope it stays silent now. We do get one reaction. A friend of mine, Gita. So it does happen, but it doesn't happen that often. And when I work with these companies to start implementing AI, what I go to them is I tell them about the theory of constraints. You might be familiar with this, and it kind of means that if you just consider all the work being done by a specific department or a specific process as a pipeline, which just fluid goes through or whatever, the speed of which the work will be processed, it's kind of determined by the smallest part of the pipeline. For the people who did like mechanical engineering and so on, please imagine it's like a non-compressible fluid going through it, because else it could be different. But yeah. So if there's like a smaller part somewhere, you can have a wider part after it, but there will just be less pressure. That's actually a nice term, because that means that just the work pressure for these people is lower, and they just have to do a bit less. Now, this is something we kind of know, and it is a theory which has been written about a lot. And when you start looking at it like this, and you add AI to it, for example, an agent or some kind of AI process, it kind of means that you make this part of the pipeline infinitely big, because these AI systems, they're mostly limited by the amount of compute you have available and the amount of money you want to spend on it. But you can kind of infinitely scale them, and there's not really a limit based on the amount of people and so on. So if you put them on the right spots, you can make sure that this pipeline will be the right width for the rest of the process. Now, if you move the person who was originally at this spot to a different place in the pipeline, you can make the pipeline wider at this spot too. So in this example, you would have like a wider pipeline at the end, but at the start it would still be smaller. So you would also maybe need to actually hire more people in front to be able to add all or to make sure that all the work can be done, because now you have this instantly scalable pipeline with this AI system in there. So if you talk with companies about it like this, you can change the conversation from AI replacing someone to AI enabling the other people and making sure that you can be more productive and actually with the same amount of people get more work done. Of course, there is the thing that the work needs to be there. And if you're only doing this for one specific process, it could cause problems because this process needs to be fed by different processes. And if you can't scale up the front of the pipeline, then it could mean that people will get fired at some point. So this is why you need to talk with these companies and need to make them understand this and make sure that they don't start at these places where it doesn't really makes much sense to start with because they're somewhere halfway in a bigger process. You can, of course, go to more like an AI assistant workflow first and make sure that the user is just assisted by AI, relieve the pressure a little bit, especially if they are on like places which are bottlenecks, just make it like an AI assistant one, so more like a copilot. This could help relieve the pressure of it. It's still human work, but it's assisted by AI. Once you go to like agentic work and autonomous agents, then you need to consider the whole picture. This also brings us to what I think is one of the parts in the European AI Act, which is very important for us as IT professionals, and something which is often a bit overlooked. I've had companies who work or who really took this to heart, and I have companies who were very lax with this. And it's about the AI literacy. If you look at the European AI Act, this paragraph is all it says about AI literacy. And it's about making sure that your people are educated about the use of the AI systems. And it sounds so simple. And it sounds like it's not that big of a deal. But I've had situations already where in some companies which were front runners, they gave people a Copilot license, and now these people were able to work more efficient. And these people were some of the seniors in this whole group. And what happened was that with the next round of evaluations of this whole team, the people who had the Copilot licenses, they suddenly were scoring better on all their KPIs. And it kind of raised the bar for everyone. And people who didn't have the licenses, they couldn't compete with the people who had. This was spotted by the company, and they gave everyone the license. And the next round of evaluations, some people were scoring very well, and some people weren't, because people who were looking into AI already, people who were going to the conferences, looking into it, they knew how to really use it. We've seen talks about the prompts and just saying the prompt, make a PowerPoint presentation from this Word document, doesn't really often give you the result you want. You have to be way more specific, and there's techniques behind this. And if these people were not trained, they would fall behind on the others, although they had the license. And this is what gets us back to the AI literacy. It is your responsibility, it is the responsibility of the companies to make sure that these people are literate about it, that they can use it, that they know how to use it. We're going back to, I don't know exactly, the 80s, I think, when computers were introduced to the workspace and people had to learn how to use a word processor. People had to learn how to use specific computer programs. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't get a job anymore. First, it was not a problem. Only a couple of companies used it, and you could get by somewhere else. Then most companies had it, and at one point it was just a requirement. If you didn't have any understanding how to use a word processor and so on, you just couldn't get an office job unless you were very, very, very good at one specific thing. And probably you were old and you were like, I can manage it until the end of my working days, and then I can just retire. But else you had to learn it. And we're getting to the same spot again with these AI systems. And it is the responsibility of these companies to make sure that the people are trained in it. And I've seen, I think it was Sarah already, and also some of the others, or in the keynote, talking about how can we instruct people. I think it was Sarah who did like the poll with different ways of doing this instruction. And there's ways of doing the online e-learning. It's with instructor-led training. It's with documentation. You can do it with workshops. There's many different ways of doing it. And just as stated before, best way is do them all where possible, of course. Make sure you focus your attention on the right parts. And I now mostly want to look at how you can focus your attention specifically on also the right topics. Because if we're talking about AI literacy, there's many different topics to consider. And in the next couple of slides, I've collected some of the topics which I think you should have in this AI literacy course you're doing, workshop, documentation, or whatever. There's no real standard framework for AI literacy at the moment. There is a list of approved courses from the European Union, which you can look at and which you can contact and use in your company if you want. They are all different. So I can't make any judgment about them or say which ones are good, which ones aren't. I haven't used all of them. So what I did for myself and for the companies I work with is mostly looking at what are, for me, the most important topics to cover at the moment. So the first topic I would like to talk about is biases and discrimination, because it's very important that our users know what biases are, because our AI systems are full of biases. And they should understand that these models are trained on information gathered all over the internet, which probably have biases in them. If anything, if you look at a lot of old work, there is biases in this old work. And they should understand what the impact is of these biases, and that these biases could also reproduce and become even stronger if a lot of content is generated which contained these biases. And you should give the users tools to detect it. What I often teach people when we do trainings is I teach them, for example, generate a picture of a doctor. If you ask your AI system to generate a picture of a doctor and there's no guardrails in place or whatsoever, you will almost certainly get a picture of a male doctor. Let's say it's in some kind of office. It's probably a white office. He's probably wearing like a lab coat. There might be some pens. There might be some medical equipment and so on. This is the kind of picture you will get because these AI systems, they will just generate what is most statistically probable. Now, you have things like temperature you can play with to make it a bit less the most statistically probable cause. And this might make it generate a woman. But if you first generate just this picture and then you ask it to change one specific parameter, You could, for example, ask it to change the ethnicity of the doctor because the doctor will probably be white. Or you could ask to change the gender of the doctor. So if you, for example, ask to now generate a picture of a female doctor, a lot of the times you will see that more in this picture changes than purely the person. Because if there were no biases in this system, it would just replace the men for women and everything else would be the same because the rest is still part of the doctor. But you will often see that suddenly there might be some flowers in this office, or there might be some pink tints suddenly in like the color scheme, or other things that these kinds of techniques can help you detect these biases by generating your content and just changing one specific parameter and seeing what else changes. This can give you hints that there are biases in play. And then you could make sure that you ask specifically for these things which are changed to keep them neutral or change them to whatever you want to make sure that these biases are not multiplied. So that's the thing about like the biases. And this also goes into discrimination because these systems might also do discrimination. I've seen situations where an AI system was told that it should not in any way filter or look at the ethnicity of a person it was evaluating. It was helping with assessing if people should get, I believe, some kind of subsidy or not. And the system did exactly what it was told. It did not look at the ethnicity of the person. What it did was it looked at the place where the person lived, because there was also address information in there. And if this was a place where there were a lot of people from certain ethnicities, it would reject this person based on earlier data in the system and so on, because there were biases in the system. So this is also important to keep in mind and trying to detect these things and making sure that people understand that this is in it and make sure to put the right guardrails in place. The next one is hallucinations. I could fill a whole talk just about talking about hallucinations. It is getting better, but there's still risks with hallucinations, and you should make sure that your users are aware of them and are aware that these AI systems can hallucinate and make sure that they understand the impact of it and give them indicators. For example, when I'm teaching people to use AI systems, I tell them, if you generate something, generate it 3 times and see what changes over these 3 times. If you're asking it to, let's say, generate some kind of argument for a conversation you're going to have, and every time it's quoting different papers and it's quoting different scientists and so on, then maybe it's just making up stuff, because it should always take the most probable thing. So if it's not, it means that there might not be a most probable thing and it's just making it up. And then especially start validating your sources. Check if the quotes which your AI system are using are actually there. Check if they're about the topic you're talking about, or if it's just making up stuff. If you get almost the same reply 3 times in a row, it's quite possible that this is the most probable solution from this AI system, and that it's not really hallucinating that much. You should still validate your sources, of course. We often try to teach the people like treat AI system a little bit like Wikipedia. When I was in school, I was taught you're not allowed to use Wikipedia as a source if you make some kind of scientific journal whatsoever or some research, but it's a very good place to start. And from there, find the reputable sources. treat it in the same way. Your AI system, you can't really quote your AI system if you're making something, if you're making like a research paper, if you're making some kind of argument, you can't go into an argument with a CEO and tell them like, ChatGPT told me that this is true, so it's true. I've seen people do it. I've seen it work, but I think you shouldn't do it. So you can ask it and then check the sources and go deeper, do the research and figure out, okay, this is the proper argument. Also make sure that they know about the transparency regulations of their AI content. I will get back to the transparency in a bit more detail. Data protection, something which is been talked about a lot already during this day. You need to make sure that your users understand that these AI systems, if you feed them data, that this data might end up at different places, and teach them when it is, when it isn't, what kind of data they're allowed to give to it, which data they're not allowed to give to it, and understand it. But also make sure that they understand that data can be poisoned. There's been many situations already where people have been hiding messages in documents, in emails, and whatsoever. I did it a long time ago when I was in high school already. If somebody asked me to copy their homework, or like, can I borrow your homework to look at it and then I'll make my own version? I would just send them a version with like some white text in it saying it was written by me. And if then the teacher came to me like, hey, you have the same homework, I would ask them like, hey, can you just select all and make the text black? And if it said it was written by me in both documents, I had my proof that they just copied my homework while they asked to just look at it for a moment. This was quite innocent. Now there's people sending documents to people, hiding messages in it with extra information for these AI systems. And if you send like a quote to a company, or you send like a contract to a company or whatever, and there's like extra information in it, and they ask Copilot to summarize it, this extra information might make your quote look better than it actually is compared to the other ones. Or with job offers, people adding prompt injections into their motivational letters. So the AI systems looking at these motivational letters will make sure that they are picked by the system. Although we said before that these AI systems shouldn't be used in this way, unless it's like just prep work, it happens. And people are doing this. We see it happen all over the place. So make sure that people are aware of these risks, and that just copying some text from the internet and pasting it into your AI assistant might be dangerous. Teach them how to spot these things. Teach them that you can maybe first paste it in Notepad. And if you see like weird symbols in there, it might mean that there's some ASCII smuggling going on. Make sure that they will also read the stuff they're pasting, or the stuff they're having analyzed, at least on a semi-regular basis, so they can try to find if these things are happening. So make sure that your users are aware of this. And also responsible AI. It is important that your users are aware that if they're using AI, and these AI systems are trained on data, maybe on data which have copyright on it. So make sure that they understand the implications of copyright infringement by AI systems. If you're using Copilot, Microsoft protects you against this copyright infringement. Although, as far as I know, there hasn't been really that many cases where this was actually really tested. But correct me if I'm wrong on this, at least in the European market. So I'm not sure how strong it will actually be. So you want to make sure that you also have your own systems in place, and not only just rely on this, but make sure your users are aware of it. Make sure your users just don't ask to create something which would be copyright infringement. Make sure they understand that this is just wrong to do. And make sure that they understand that they are responsible for the AI output. You can't hide behind the argument, but my AI made this. You are responsible for the output of it. And if it's like an autonomous system, if it's like an AI agent, you as a company are responsible for it. Even if this AI system will tell your customer that they can get everything they buy for free, you are responsible for this outcome. You need to make sure that this doesn't happen. Of course, there are some there is some leeway here because there's also stuff with users just making mistakes and so on. But keep it in mind and make sure you train your users on this. And this also brings us to transparency. The European AI Act states some rules about transparency. If you're generating content using AI and you're not doing anything with it, in almost all cases, you need to disclose that this is generated by AI. If it's just text, you don't have to disclose it unless it's informing the public of matters of public interest, however you interpret this. I've had situations where I worked with customers which were quite big companies in a country, and they provided services which were required in this company for everyone to have. And they used AI systems to generate newsletters for their people who took their services. And I told them that if I would interpret this as being informing the public of matters of public interest, and they don't have to really worry about it yet due to there not really being any enforcement, but it might be good to start looking into this and start making up their mind on how they want to handle this, because it could become a problem soon. Also, one very important thing, as soon as you have an AI system which in any way is doing emotional detection in whatever any form, you need to communicate this to the users. What exactly this means is again not very clear, but in my opinion, if you have like a system where you have like multiple topics and based on the conversation, a different topic is being picked, this could be considered as being an emotional detection. So I would always suggest that if you have a user communicate with any any AI system via text, voice, or whatsoever, make sure you always communicate this to the user, that they know they're interacting with an AI system. Now, what can you already do, even if you're not on your journey yet with implementing AI, or you're already working a lot with implementing AI, which I think a lot of us are? Check if you have done these things, and if not, start doing them as soon as possible. Improve the AI literacy of your users. I've had companies who said, we have this e-learning course for AI literacy of our users, and only if 80% of the people have finished the course, we're going to implement Copilot, not sooner, just to make sure that we know as many people have done this course already. Of course, you would like to go to 100%, but you also need to look into the feasibility of it. So I thought that was a good step already to make sure that they push this. Lower the barriers of getting information. Make sure that your users will be able to get the information as easy as possible. If you have a policy, make sure it's easy accessible. If there's other informations about the rules about AI systems, about this AI literacy. Make it as easy as possible to access this information. And one pet peeve from me is create a disclosure point for the AI problems. If somebody spots any problems with your AI systems, make a place where they can notify it. Just like with security disclosures, make an AI disclosure point. You don't want people to go to the social media and tell them about how your AI system screwed up. You want them to go to you so you can fix it and work with them and make them heard. And make sure you have a good AI policy. A good AI policy is not just making sure some checkboxes are ticked. It is making sure that it's working in practice, that it's looking at how your users have to work with the AI systems. It's setting up the guardrails for your users. It's making sure that they know what they can and what they can't do, and which systems are allowed to be implemented and which ones aren't. And with that being said, I saw Torsten already look at his watch, so I took that as a hint that I was almost over time.
No, not really. You have
But yeah, um, on the slide here it shows my GitHub. There is a slightly older version of the slides on the GitHub already. Somewhere today or tomorrow I will also upload this newer version of the slides on there, so you can just get them at my GitHub. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. And if you don't want to ask them now or remember them later, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, on the socials, or whatever. And I hope you enjoy this. And for the people watching this later, thank you for watching it later. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
perfect. Thank you so much, Leo. Great session, great insights. For me, it was also good to see that even we are the Copilot Community Conference, it's not really Copilot related, it's more AI related, and it's good to have such sessions also in this. Hopefully the attendees have the same, but feel the same, but I think so, yes. So thanks again for being here and speaking at the Co. Great session. Thank you so much.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
No, unfortunately not. And the Q&A part is also empty. Perhaps some of you have questions. If not, of course, please send some hearts and feedback to Leo for his session and his talk.
And don't forget to post on the socials with the Coca-Cola tag to be part of the raffle, right?
That's
we're getting
completely right,
close
yes.
to the end.
Yes, one session left, and I would say after the last session we will close the raffle and see what's going on social and on the feedback part.
Don't we have the closing keynote from Donna also afterwards?
Yes.
Okay.
It was planned for the keynote, opening keynote, but yeah, because of some reasons, issues, Donna is able to make it for the end note. So very happy about this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Community Conference, where innovation dances, where everything shines. Community